So this TikToker may be going to prison for murder. Now he calls himself Mr. Prada, and Mr. Prada is 20 years old and he makes a lot of content on TikTok. He's really popular with over 4 million followers. Damn. But one day, Mr. Prada gets on camera and he does something a little strange. He shaves his head. And I guess he shaves his eyebrows too. And then he posts this video.
Yo, oh my god, look like I got cancer. What the f?
And his followers are looking at this like, what is this guy doing? And the next day, Mr. Prada posts a carousel of photos with his shaved head, and his audience is like, yo, is this guy okay? And they start thinking, maybe he's going through something, like maybe he's having some mental health issues. And then he gets on camera and he starts talking about changing his name.
My name is not Prada no more. Stop calling me that. That's not my name. That's not my name.
And he starts talking about rebranding himself.
I'm rebranding myself to my new identity. My new identity is Emo Psycho Twink.
Emo Psycho Twink. We're just gonna go ahead and keep calling him Mr. Prada. So anyway, Mr. Prada keeps making these posts every day, and every day he's acting more and more strange. Here's the thing though, he's been pretty open about being diagnosed as bipolar.
Y'all never seen anybody that's bipolar before? See, I was trying to hide it, but it just slipped out.
But it seems like now he's definitely letting people see him without a filter, and his fans are starting to worry. But then, at some point around this time, the worst thing happens to him. He goes through a really bad breakup, and he seems pretty devastated.
I don't want to be with you.
But we'll get back to him, because real quick, I want to introduce this guy. He calls himself Dr. Nick. And Dr. Nick is 69 years old, and he used to be a Catholic priest, but now he's a therapist. He works a lot with LGBTQ youths, and apparently people love him.
I'm Dr. Nick Abraham, and here's my new book, I'm Limping Very Well, Thank You.
And one day, somehow, I don't know how, Dr. Nick and Mr. Prada meet. And no one knows what their relationship is. Maybe they're friends, maybe he's counseling him, maybe something else romantic is going on as they're both openly gay. We don't actually have that information right now. But at one point, Dr. Nick goes over to Mr. Prada's apartment to meet up with him for something. And no one knows exactly what happens when they meet. Maybe they're talking, maybe they're smashing, but allegedly something happens that makes Mr. Prada snap. And suddenly, pow, he hits Dr. Nick over the head with some blunt object. And pow, he keeps hitting him over and over, again and again, as hard as he can, until Dr. Nick stops moving because he's unalived. And as if that isn't messed up enough, around that same time, Mr. Prada posts this video on TikTok of himself dancing. And right now, no one is sure if he posted it before or after Dr. Nick's murder. But anyway, then Mr. Prada rolls Dr. Nick up in a tarp and he drags the body out of his apartment building and he loads him into, not his own car, but into Dr. Nick's car. And he steals the car and he drives along the highway and he dumps the body on the side of the road near a ditch, allegedly. Then he drives back home to his apartment to clean up the mess he made. The next day, someone is driving by and they spot the tarp on the side of the road and they're like, hey, that looks suspicious. So they call police. So police come out and they investigate and they find Dr. Nick's body in the tarp. And when they see the state his body is in, they know this was a murder. And they know this is Dr. Nick, so they start looking for Dr. Nick's car, because his car is missing. The next day, they spot it in some surveillance footage, and it's parked in a local shopping center. And they're able to get some footage of the person driving the car, aka Mr. Prada. But at this point, police don't know who Mr. Prada is. To them, he's just some random guy. So they release some screenshots of this footage to the public on social media. Like, hey, does anyone know who this guy is? And almost immediately, people respond like, yeah, that's Mr. Prada. The day after that, police spot Dr. Nick's car again. This time, it's out driving around. And so, bam, they try and pull it over. Now, Mr. Prada is, of course, in this car driving, and he sees the red and blue lights in his rear view, and he's like, oh, and I guess he doesn't want to go to prison, so instead of stopping, he suddenly throws it in reverse, and pow, he hits the police car. Although I'm not sure he hit the car very hard. But then, skirt, he speeds away and kaboom, he crashes the car. And then he jumps out and he ditches the car and he runs away. And someone actually got a little footage of him running away. You can see it here. And here's a picture of Dr. Nick's car, and you can see it. It's all banged up. Now, Mr. Prada gets away, but police, they've now identified him. So they know who he is. So they go and get a warrant, and they search his apartment. And I guess he did a horrible job cleaning up after himself because they find a ton of blood and some possible murder weapons. And of course, the DNA there is a match for Dr. Nick's DNA. Then they check local security footage from a few days before, and they see Dr. Nick walking up to Mr. Prada's apartment door wearing the same clothes he was found in. So now, police know Mr. Prada has some explaining to do. Meanwhile, Mr. Prada, he's still on the run, and he reportedly gets on a bus and he heads from Louisiana 6 hours away over to Dallas, Texas. But by this point, word has gotten out and Mr. Prada's face is all over the news.
Good evening. First tonight, Baton Rouge police searching for this man, 20-year-old Terrion Thomas, in connection with the death of William Nicholas Abraham.
And so he only makes it another day before, bam, police finally find him and they arrest him. Here's his mugshot.
Popular TikTok creator has been indicted in the September killing of a Baton Rouge therapist.
So at this point, you might be asking, why did he do it? Why did Mr. Prada, allegedly, suddenly go crazy and unalive Dr. Nick, this therapist who everyone apparently loves so much? Were they really lovers? Did Mr. Prada just suddenly go crazy? It's also interesting to note that 5 months before this, before he suddenly went off and shaved his head, he posted this TikTok. Practicing for my mugshot, cause this might be the year someone gonna meet God if they piss me off too much. So, is this just a coincidence? Did he know he was gonna snap on someone? Did he know that someone would be Dr. Nick? There's just so many questions that are unanswered about this whole thing. Well, this looks like a job for the internet, because the internet starts digging into this story, and some people find that all the way back in 2015, Dr. Nick was accused of inappropriately touching a young boy, one of his patients, and it made the news. And he was actually arrested for it. Here's his mugshot. Now, the charges against him were dropped due to lack of evidence, so nothing ever came of it, but the internet is speculating that perhaps Dr. Nick tried to touch Mr. Prada inappropriately, and that is what has led to the murder. I'm not saying that's true at all. I'm saying that's one of the leading theories people online have come up with. Regardless, that's all speculation, and all of this is alleged, as Mr. Prada hasn't actually been to trial yet, and we won't know what really happened until that trial happens. And thank you to Leonardo.ai for sponsoring this video. If you want to make badass art for your videos like this, or like this, or like this, then sign up for Leonardo.ai.